The Lewis Chessmen in fact and fiction, these Viking relics have inspired so many stories. They're intricately carved, they're wide-eyed, they've been crafted from walrus tusk, and in many ways were lost to time. But they've inspired so many different myths in literature and even pop culture. You've seen them in Harry Potter, in different historical fictions. And we're going to find out today why their story endures from the best selling author, Sara Winokur, whose novel, Ivory Bones, has the Lewis Chessmen in them. Sarah, thank you for joining us. This is going to be fun.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Okay, tell us. I mean, why do these little guys, and if people can kind of see, I do have the book cover, and I know you've got a few that you can hold up as we're chatting here. Why do
Sure.
you think it is that they intrigue us so much? What is it about these little guys that spark our imagination?
Right. Well, first of all, they were carved in the 12th century, so very long time ago, either in Iceland or Norway. No one's really sure. But then they disappeared for the next 600 years. No one knew where they were. And they were then found off of Scotland on the Isle of Lewis. So that's why they're called the Lewis Chessmen. And shall I go ahead and just show you a couple of the pieces? They're not your typical chess pieces, but they are extremely expressive. They have like very human expressive features. This is the queen, and you can see she's sort of holding her head in shock or aghast at the battlefield. And this is what is called a berserker. This is in lieu of the rooks or the castles that we have now. And this is the word berserk actually comes from the Icelandic for berserk. And these were ancient Viking warriors that went into battle and half crazed because they would drink alcohol and ingest hallucinogens. And you can see he's biting his shield. And so they're very unique uh, chess pieces, to say the least.
Yeah, that berserker guy, he is just so hilarious. I think he almost epitomizes the Lewis Chessman when you see that face. So can you talk about those expressions? I mean, I think maybe that's one of the reasons they almost don't seem ancient. And I
Right.
believe when they were first found, people were like, These can't be that old," because that expressiveness isn't something that we think about when we think about medieval pieces.
Absolutely. I mean, and the fact that they were carved when 800 years ago, um, it's really astounding just how intricately carved they are. This is another one. This is a knight riding what looks like an Icelandic horse. And so it was hard for people to believe that they were carved so long ago and so beautifully.
And there are several that are still out there missing. They're probably worth millions. I think there was a woman, it was in her
Yeah.
dresser drawer. There was an actual one that was found. And you want to talk about that?
Sure. So each of the most of the pieces are in the British Museum, but there are still four or five missing. And in 2019, one of these little berserkers was found in the bureau drawer of some old woman who had passed away, and her son thought, "Oh, that looks interesting." And so he took it to the museum just to find out what it was, and it turned out to be one of the missing Lewis berserkers. And he put it up for auction, and it sold for $1 million. So that's just how valuable each piece is.
I kind of feel sorry for that woman. It would have been wonderful if she would have known that in her
Yeah,
lifetime.
yes, absolutely. She probably just thought, oh, this looks like
Yeah.
cute little thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They are a wonderful MacGuffin as far as storytelling. They're driving the plot of your story. They tie into the theme. Can you tell them how you use them exactly in Ivory Bones?
Sure. So I have them being, it's a historical fiction. So much of the book actually is based in historical fact, as these, Lewis Chessmen truly are. And in 1627, there was a Barbary pirate raid on Iceland. The Barbary pirates came from North Africa. So they raided Iceland and took 400 villagers back to Algeria to sell them as slaves. So in my book, I have one of these captives having possession in her family of the Lewis Chessmen, and she takes them along with her. But then the ship there's a shipwreck, and they end up on the Isle of Lewis. But she hangs on to one of the berserkers. She had left three pieces behind because in the chaos of the raid, she didn't have time to collect them all. And so the mystery sort of surrounds, it's a murder mystery, uh, finding these lost, extremely valuable Lewis Chessmen. So not
Yeah.
everyone that's looking for them has the maybe highest degree of morality.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, your books, you also wrote Double Blind. Ivory Bones is your second book. You do such
Oh,
a
yeah.
magnificent job of weaving in historical fact and real research. And your books are mystery, but then they also lean a little bit toward that historical fiction. And you've got that Nordic flair to them, and they're always just so imaginative. And you mentioned the Barbary pirates. And I think there was a little bit of authentic research that came from them as well. Is there a connection that you have to those guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had known, both of my books are set primarily in Iceland. And I had known about this Barbary pirate raid on Iceland because it was obviously a major event there in Iceland's history. I had known about it, but my sister one day called me and she said, "Did you know that we're actually related? Actually descended from the mastermind of this pirate raid on Iceland?" And I had no idea. But turns out he is my ancestor, which I'm not necessarily proud of, but I think I mean that was 400 years ago, so I can't be too responsible for it. But I think it just added a little bit more uh, like enthusiasm for me writing that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will put a little bit too much credence to one's ancestry. We're all such a glorious mixing pot from different
Yes,
cultures, different people, different areas of the world at different times in history. I think that's one of the things that makes us as humans so wonderful.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the main character of your book and this diary, and tell us a little bit more about what she's experiencing, because this diary as well is a big part of the Ivory Bones story.
That's right. So the diary was written by one of the captives of this pirate raid. And in that diary, which I have interspersed throughout the book in first person point of view, so the reader can experience it as it's unfolding. Um, there are clues within this diary as to where the chess pieces are hidden in Iceland. So it is a dual timeline historical mystery, and the present day mystery takes place in finding, which features really the main protagonist, who is a forensic geneticist. And there's a parallel story here because the captive obviously had to overcome, trauma and torment and had to deal with her uh, unfortunate and really horrific situation as a slave in Algeria. So she had to endure these things that were placed on her externally. But the protagonist in my story also is dealing with a lot of trauma from her past. But some of it is due to her own like false beliefs. So throughout the book, she comes to realize that she has power over her own situation as well. So there's a parallel story between these two women.
There's a parallel story to you as well, Sarah. You are a thriver. I also think that your journey as an author is really enticing. We're talking to you on day one where we're focused on the readers. And I always say that readers, I mean, you always start with a reader before you become a writer. And your background
Hmm.
is as a genetic researcher. I'm curious how you used your career, your background, your analytical mind to then segue into becoming an author.
Right. So I was a genetic researcher for 25 years at the University of California. I then came down with ovarian cancer, which, I ultimately was able to, I think at this point I can say cure because it was more than 10 years ago. Um, so I decided to sort of reinvent myself. I had the choice of going back to doing research in genetics or just switching it up altogether and changing careers. And so that was at the point where I decided, well, I'm just going to write a couple of books. But I did want to include a little bit of genetics in the mystery in a very light way. So it's not it's not like heavy duty textbook style genetics. It's just like little fun things that I incorporate into the mystery. And uh, one of the reasons it's set in Iceland, aside from the fact that I love Nordic noir, is because Iceland does have this DNA database of most of its citizens, and it's not a criminal database. They're using that to identify genes that cause a lot of common disorders. So I went to Iceland just to tour that company and just became enamored really with the culture and the food and the people. And I've been back 6 or 7 times since.
You're a testament to an author when they do find their passion, and being able to go to a place where you can explore and you can write about it and you just pull all of that together. I think that's truly magical. um, and Sarah, you've been with us. You were one of the OGs when it comes to the book fest. You were one of the very first authors back when Double Blind came out. You're back with us for Ivory Bones. There it is behind me. And I just want to let folks know too that in addition, everybody is going to see the links in the chat. You have your speaker page, you have your book page, and you are also the cover author on the Indie Author Magazine Reader's Edition. And of course, Ivory Bones is featured in there. Congratulations on all your amazing successes. And Sarah, thanks so much for joining us for the book fest.
Well, thank you, Desiree. It's been a real pleasure. I always love talking with you.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Okay,
And coming
sounds
up
good.
next, everyone hold on tight because we're going to head into those live author chats here on the Bookfest Adventure.